Okay, let's start. So welcome to our speaker, Elica
Krajceva
from cApStAn. I think you all know, or most of you will have heard of this firm based in Brussels, cApStAn, that has been involved now in many of the large-scale cross-cultural surveys in the field that we are all working in. So Elica was born in former Yugoslavia and studied cultural anthropology. Then she first worked as translator, interpreter, English teacher in different countries and different projects, different contexts, before she joined cApStAn in 2000, first as a verifier and as a linguistic expert. And since 2010, she has been working as a project manager for different of the large-scale projects that cApStAn is working on. So PRQ, we're in contact with Elica, PISA, SNR. I'm sure there are many other projects, and also in the ESS. We have been more or less in constant contact for the last 2 years with the verification of the ESS questionnaire translations. So basically the talk that she will give today will be about the different approaches that cApStAn has towards assuring, improving questionnaire translation quality in several of these large-scale projects. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Britta, and thank you everybody for coming and finding time to follow this presentation on our activities, especially in the field of linguistic quality assurance. You have all heard of cApStAn, just heard of some of our activities, but now I will present a little bit on who we are, where do we come from, and what we do, how we do it, and where we are heading to. Our headquarters are in Brussels. We ensure quality assurance and quality control services and consultancy. We have also an office in Philadelphia, and our sister company is Brantra. They do translation and adaptation, and normally we work on different projects, except there are some exceptions like EU MEDIS, where we ensured the translation and adjudication in the project. So they were involved in the translation, and we did the adjudication and organized the translation team meetings and adjudication and reconciliation meetings. So there we work together. Otherwise, typically we work on different projects. So we have been around for 15 years now in the field of ensuring equivalence in multilingual data collection, and with private clients, with public sectors. We have a close collaboration with research institutes like GESIS, and we have a small team. But we have a big network of linguists in their countries, and they are all trained. What we are interested in doing now, and maybe this can be done in cooperation with GESIS, is training national teams, team of translators, and so on, so that we extend this upstream activity in ensuring linguistic quality and assurance. And we are also active in different conferences and writing papers with your colleagues, so that we bring together the theory and the practice closer to each other. The list of references is long. These are some of the projects that we worked on. All of them are not surveys, but you can go to our website and see more in detail about these projects. The most important projects that are there have their project sheets, so that you can see more in detail what we did on these projects. And what we really do and actually do in the projects, we can divide our fields of activities in two main fields. It's quality assurance, the upstream part, which usually starts with workshops for item writers, actually, on just informing them, guiding them on the translation traps, linguistic traps during the writing of the item, and also the cultural particularities that they should be aware of, and that can produce some translation hurdles in the later stages. Then the source is enhanced through translatability assessment. This is something very similar to your advanced translation, just it comes with categories. The feedback from the linguist is in a framework of categories. We will see about them later. When the source is based on computer, then we can optimize it with parsing and also segmentation of the source, so that in the target language the segments come well to the layout of the survey. Then we also produce consolidated monitoring instruments that record every step of the project. Each step for each item, for each language, so the translation, the translatability assessment, the translation, the adjudication, the verification are all documented in English, of course, and in a framework of categories, so that further for a research we can go back through the history of an item and search for a certain reason for a certain behavior of an item if it is of a linguistic nature, of course. And these are centralized instruments, so we try to conceive them in a user-friendly way. Then in cooperation with researchers, we draft a comprehensive and draw up a comprehensive translation and adaptation guidelines. And for some projects, like PISA for Development, for example, we go out and train local national teams of translators and national project managers who work on the translations. And on the other side is the quality control on a downstream side, where you have heard of probably of our activities as verification. It is by linguists, done by linguists or pairs of linguists for projects where the assessment is administered in the higher education students, evaluation of their achievements. So then we need a linguist and an expert domain engineer, for example, in engineering or in economics, and they work together on the verification of the translations. That was for AHELO, for example. And then we document the deviations. This is framed in verify interventions categories. We will see them after. And we also monitor corrective action. We call this final check. When the verifier's feedback go back to the country and they accept it or not, they correct or not, we check if these issues were addressed correctly, they were correctly implemented in the final versions. And we also assist researchers in analysis of field trial results when it comes to linguistic part, of course. And then from all these steps at the end are concluded with quantitative and qualitative reports on the project. Now there is a recent addition to this list of steps. It is listening to recordings of interviews. It can be in Georgian, Bosnian, any language, and report on the extent on which the interviewers followed their guidelines, their instructions, so that we see if any change in the results were due to the interview and how it was carried on. And this is a kind of overview of all the steps that are contained in a typical workflow for a survey, but we do not do them all in the same project, of course, because there is a conflict of interest if the same people do the translation or the review and then the verification. So these are different people working on them. For some projects we do the single or double translation, and then we organize the adjudication and the meeting between the translators and the adjudicator. Then for the projects where the domain experts are involved, we implement their input on the adjudicated version, so that the version is best localized for the national context. And we also apply any updates, any errata that are discovered in the source version. During all these steps, you all know that there are sometimes errata discovered. Until the last stages, we take care of this. How do we do it? We do it through conceptual frameworks of translatability categories for the translatability assessment. They are defined. Oops, this is not centered. How can I? This is close or not? No. How can I close it? Can you help me, please? F5, isn't it? F5? Yeah. Well, okay. So there are 14 of them. I don't know if you can see them. They are all defined. So the linguists, when they want to define a problem, they spot it in the source. When they translate it in their language, they categorize it with okay. Now we have to find the slide because it went out here. Okay, and we have the verifiers categories. Our verifiers were trained to use them. They know them upside down. So when in a report we have inconsistency issue or missing information issue and so on, we know that we all speak of the same thing. We all the verifiers use the same category to explain, to describe the same issue in all the versions. And they are presented in drop-down menus in Excel, and this is not only user-friendly, but it also generates reports. And these reports come in tables. What is interesting about them is not only that we can see how many consistency issues were reported in one national version, but we can also have this analyzed per item, so that if we see that in one particular item similar problem was spotted in 2/3 of the language versions, then we know that we should go further and look for a linguistic issue, see where this problem comes from. Our approach is based on new insights in how and why different question adaptations affect measurement. We have mentors in our work, like Professor Ronald Hambleton, who has validated our verification intervention categories. Then late Professor Harkness and also Professor Elica Krajceva from the Liège University. When we start with our linguistic activities in PISA, it was just verification, while now we do much more upstream preparations so that to reduce the corrective action, to reduce the downstream disparities. Our main value is the documentation. The documentation of all the history of an item from the very first steps to until the end in English, so that no matter in what language we have been working, as I said, all the steps are documented in centralized monitoring tool. And this documentation is partly Excel, because historically we work in Excel. We love working in Excel. We can do a lot with Excel, even though it was not conceived for writing. But we even now put the instructions for the linguists in the Excel, so that they can switch between the different worksheets while working. Everything is handy and there. But there are more and more surveys that are on web platforms, so that are computer-based. So we are trying to integrate our know-how now with the new means and the new technology, and we do this with partners, but also we have some tools that we are developing in-house, and these are applications that allow us to run automated checks at various steps of the project, and then we receive reports generated like this. It depends what we asked from the machine to flag, or like this one, we can check consistency, glossaries, and so on. Just it depends what we feed to it. It depends also on the project. And when we come to documenting the translatability assessment, maybe I can show to you how we do it through an example. Let's say this is a real life example from a survey. I prefer eating light or fat-free foods and drinks. I don't know if you already see a problem with this item. Danuta says yes, and Britta too. So one of the linguists said, in my language there is a logical problem, because eating cannot be used for drinks, and also fat-free cannot be used for drinks. We say light drinks. And in another language, the feedback was that food and eating has the same word in Indonesian, so this would be redundancy, a repetition. So there we are trying to work around these problems, and sometimes we propose alternative wording that would avoid these problems, but would still have the same information, the same value in it, like rewarding, I prefer fat-free foods and light drinks. And of course, this is submitted to the item writers to review it and to see if it is useful for them or not, or inspire them to reward it in another way. It depends what they want with the item, what is the item construct. And sometimes these problems can be solved just by translation note, just by guiding the translation teams how they should address the issue, so that we obtain the translation we want, and so that we ask the question we want. And now, to show how we do it, the other day I found a quotation in one of Moller's works that I liked a lot, and I will just read it out. Much in the way that a pilot's handbook does not enable everyone to fly a plane, those working with documentation need to understand the processes and outcomes that are recorded in the documentation. And the technical know-how and training and thorough understanding of the subject matter are also essential. So we find this also essential for our work, for our team of linguists who are all over the world. We think that it is very important that they know what is the project's aim, what is their place and where in the project, what is their role in the project, what is the aim of their task in the project, so that they build a kind of project ownership. This is an added value to the project for all parts, for themselves and for us. For this we train them through web trainings or face-to-face trainings, and we also prepare for them glossaries of all kinds, glossaries that are project related or glossaries that are assignment related. Also the definitions of the categories, verifiers on translatability, reminders on common writing, how to write these comments so that you can understand them afterwards, that they can be understandable for all the people who look at these projects, from the national teams, from the reviewers on our side, until the researchers, if they go back to these items in the future. Then we also help desk them throughout the entire process. They can ask us questions. We go back to the project initiators if needed for the answers, or to the researchers if needed for the answers. We compile the answers in files, and we share them with all the participants in the project so that everyone can benefit on it. And then we also have feedback that goes in two senses. So to do this, we have a whole backstage activities before the project, because to achieve good results at the end and our aims, the good results actually start in the very beginning of the project, in the preparation of the project. We analyze the text, we see what is needed, how to make the tools in the most friendly way, user-friendly way for everybody, and how to select the information for our linguists, what they need to know in the project. We have a lot of information on the project, but they don't want to know, and they cannot absorb everything. Too much information kills information. So we filter this information so that we obtain the results together in a teamwork. So this is the end result is a result of the linguist work and of teams' efforts together. The instructions that we prepare are project specific, or they are on the tools they use for that project. The tools become more and more sophisticated. They need trainings, how to use, I don't know, OLT or different platforms for different projects. PISA or PIAC have different platforms. And then item per item guidelines. and how to use them to make them user-friendly so that they do not need 3 or 4 screens to read them and to apply them, and the follow-up, which is also very important, communication throughout the entire process. By mail, by Skype, and by these shared files with frequently asked questions, as I said. And then their feedback comes to us. And we review their comments, we check if they are readable, understandable, and then we perform all kinds of spot checks on the important issues so that we double check that everything is addressed as wanted. Sometimes these checks are automated checks, and we review and give feedback to the verifiers. This feedback goes both ways. We prepare online questionnaires for the linguists so that they can give to us the feedback, and we can constantly improve our tools, our guidelines, instruments, our trainings, and also we give personal feedback to our linguists. We highlight what was excellent in their work, what was very much appreciated in their work and what they really achieved, and then we also point out where there is still a space for improvement, and trying to give them tips how to improve it, not just improve it, but how we can help them to improve it. And because we are going in a certain way, and where we are going to, this is actually, these are stages that we are working on, and what we are trying is to improve the interaction between different steps. And we already, for example, implement the verification feedback into the optimization of the source. If verifiers flagged certain problems in the translation, then we are trying to avoid them, to have them in the source. But we think that this can be still improved and optimized through systematized retrieval of information, and then there is one step here, one area here where we are interested in development, where we are interested in partnering, and GESIS may be interested in this partnership, because we miss this P from the trapped model. We don't have it still in our steps. This is how we see and understand our mission in our next development of our steps. And this is where we would like to extend our playground towards to fulfill this mission. And we are also thinking in more practical ways how to and what to develop in the future. My 30 minutes are done. Thank you very much. If you want to, thank you.
Many thanks, first of all, Elica, that was really interesting. I think we all knew a bit, but each of us probably different aspects of cApStAN's work, but it was very good to have an overview also of the different plans you have, and the capability assessment and verification. So many thanks. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, so thank you very much. It was really interesting. I've been working with cApStAN on and off for, I think, almost 15 years now, and I didn't know all these details. I'm interested in hearing more about how you get your verifiers. You have a huge network. We know that the quality of the verifiers can be very different depending on what country language it is. So how do you actually reach out to them? How are they trained? What qualifications do they require?
Well, our verifiers come from they're linguists. They come from different background and experience. It depends on the project. For some projects we need people who work in education, for PISA for example, and for others we look for them through the universities. We have a network that comes through the universities too. Then we have also researchers in social sciences who are linguists in the same time, who work, our Norwegian verifier, for example, who work for us.
So is being a linguist a requirement, or is it nice to have?
It is a requirement. It is, the verifier should be proficient in the language, in English, and of course in his mother or her mother tongue. These are university educated people. I mean,
Do they need a linguistic qualification, or is it just like, I have a psychology degree in German and that's fine, type of thing?
Well, it depends on the project. For translatability assessments, just a psychology background is not may not be enough. The linguistic background is priority. For certain languages, we may not find that we work with African, Indian languages, and university-educated person with excellent knowledge of English and their mother tongue in a survey that focuses on sociology, if it is sociologist, can also do the work. But first of all, we test them. So they agree to go through a test. We give them a verification test, and then we see if they are fit for this assignment. Because you may have excellent linguists, but they would not give us the feedback we need for the project. So we explain about our assignment. Some of them are not interested in, and and others find this assignment extremely interesting because they translate all day long. They are alone all the time, and when it comes to this teamwork, they are very much interested in it. So it depends on the project. They come a bit from all the backgrorounds.
And they're all freelancers?
No,
No.
we have teachers working as
No, I mean
professors.
they're not. They're paid for the work in that project. They're not employed by cApStAn.
No. Yes, they work for us as freelance, on contract.
Okay.
On contract. Yes.
And I have one more question about the verifiers, because you were explaining how you check the quality of their work. But I'm wondering how can you do that? Because the core team can not know all the languages that the verifiers cover.
No,
How do you know
no.
that their verification skills are really up to par?
Well, we already cover a number of languages in the team. Arabic, Slavic languages, Romance languages, Germanic languages, what else? Turkish, what else we have? We already have. Now, passive knowledge on some languages is also helpful, and we have developed ways of systematic checks how to spot certain omitted issues. Of course, we cannot control it 1000%, of course, but I have noticed that with the years of work in cApStAn, my eyes go directly where it should go. I see that the verifier didn't spot something. It's also experience. It's also experience. Sometimes Google Translate helps just to spot macroscopic issues. For example, you see from the layout that the sentence is too short or the layout is strange, and then you go and check with Google Translate and it gives you something different. You know the source very well already, so you see that it was a copy-paste mistake and this is a sentence coming from another part, and maybe the verifier didn't see it, because sometimes the amount, the word count is very big. So it happens. We are all human. That's where the automated checks come handy, because the human eye may miss things, but when you program the computer to compare the source and the target, I do not program it. I don't know how Manuel does it in our team, but we have the reports with missing translations or source language in the translation or things like that. So it is a combination of systematized procedures, automatic checks, and experience, and trained verifiers once more.
The linguist, also the person who reviewed or heard the interview, got any training on how to do that? I mean,
this is something new, and they do not really have a training. We haven't gone so far to training them, but instructions, yes. We never give an assignment without instructions, precise instructions how to do it. This is something that we would also like to develop, and Danuta knows that some of my proposals for contact and exchange with you was exactly this part about, we would like to know more about interviewers and what do they see and how are they instructed and what do they really, because we have access during our work only to the interviewer instructions in the questionnaire. But we do not know how it really goes on. Now, this was wonderful when we received this task. We were so happy because we could see, for Bosnia, for example, there is a video recording. So we can see how it goes, but they do it on tablets. So we cannot see really the interview, because this is also interesting for us to know how the interview flows, what the interview sees, so that when we verify or when we translate, we think of that, how the screen will change, because the translation also depends on that, what will happen on the screen. So it would be good that we cooperate on that, so that we can train also our, if there is a demand for this assignment, for this service, so that we can train our linguists how to assess if the guidelines were followed. They need to have the guidelines first, of course, to see if they were followed.
You have that really nice example with the fat-free foods and the light drinks. And so basically there are two ways we can cope with that. We can either have translation guidelines saying watch out for this in your language, or we can go back to the item writers, which I think you sometimes do, and propose a better source formulation. Now, what I'm interested in is your overall experience. How often do the item writers accept the proposed changes?
They do.
They do.
They do. They do. They may not accept the word-to-word wording that we proposed, because they know what they want with the item, but they do. And maybe I can show here. So this is what it looks like in real life. Then now we have here a column in which we have comments or final words proposed by the client. Here, this is not at that stage. It's not the final stage. But yes, they do. They comment. We have columns for the entire process, and they comment on it. Why they sometimes just okay. Sometimes why they didn't accept. And yes, they do.
And when you have these item writer workshops, like how do you organize them? What kind of people go there? Is it like project related? Like you would organize for PISA, the main writer?
Yeah, we did it for PISA 2015, and I can also try to show you something more on this. This is what this is a workshop with different examples, with different issues to what to think of while writing items. Because of course item writers are not linguists. It's normal that they have a goal with a question, but then when it comes to the cognitive part, how we understand this question. So another example. How an instruction can be understood in different ways. This is where it becomes interesting in this work, where the downstream work can enhance the upstream work, because then if many verifiers have reacted to this instruction, then we can teach the item writers not to write, we have problems with it, not to write such instructions anymore, to reward it.
I have two questions. One is short. It's about source languages. Do you ever work with source languages other than English, or is English your prevailing?
Yes, for some. Yes, for some.
You have like, two source languages, for instance, as they do it in Eurobarometer sometimes. And then how do you go about the verification?
Yes, we do have a project, but my colleague was involved in it, and I cannot give you details. But I do remember a project that was in Swedish. The source language was in Swedish, and it was for a scientific institution in Sweden. And if I'm not wrong, it was about psychology or sociology, so social sciences. So I will have more information on that and answer to you by mail or in person. I will just check with my colleague what exactly it was, and
it's just interesting in how prevailing English is as the language.
Well, it is prevailing. It is prevailing for some projects. We prepare also translation into French. Double translation, reconciliation for PISA, for example, so that we have the two sources in French and in English. But English in most of the projects prevails.
And one other question, on one of your slides, when you mentioned translatability categories, you also, one of the items that you had on the slide was the known difficulties and the known workarounds.
Yes.
Could you please say something more about it? Do you have like a data bank of things that are notorious for causing problems in translation?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, and we are connecting it now with the automated checks, so that when I receive the source for translatability assessment, I pass it through it, and it flags, for example, double-barreled questions, flags them, immediately with the comment that would go with it, that we elaborated, we thought about it, and so on, so that we have these at least from the start. And now you have issues in some languages that do not appear in others, and that can be solved just with a translation note. For example, I remember my colleagues Musab comment on disagree. In these response categories, strongly agree, strongly disagree. Disagree in Arabic is just reject or object on it. So there is a trick how to translate it. There is a workaround. And it is handy to be found in a translation note. And the same for strongly. As we discussed with you, it is very difficult to render it in Slavic languages in the exactly the same way for positive and for negative. So for the two ends of the scale. So we implement this advice into the translation notes to be integrated afterwards.
One question from Angelica and then online.
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. I mean, we, on the EFS side, from round 5, since we worked together, we know the verification part, but I was curious now on the other side that you mentioned in one of the first slides on the adaptation work you're doing with sort of brand trend, something like that. I was wondering, is that checking adaptation, or is it producing adaptative translations, or am I completely misled, or I just wanted to know a little bit more about that branch.
It is identifying places in the source that should be adapted. We have, of course, compulsory adaptations that come also from the item writers, like ISCAT levels and so on. But on the other hand, from linguistic point of view, we can spot still more issues there that the linguist will say, oh, this, I don't know, the Christmas bread wouldn't work in China. And then there would go a translation note that adapt this to the equivalent traditional, yes, in such an occasion, yes.
But that would be interesting because we are kind of going into studies of that direction in a EU project in collaboration with EFS Share, well, EFS Share mainly, and I think that could be something we'd like to inquire on your knowledge of. In which cases this occur, and can that be systematically already? That could be very interesting for us.
But I think it's brand trial adaptation, so they also offer questionnaire translation.
Yes.
Because cApStAn often speaks of translation as adaptation, where other projects would only speak of translation, because often adaptation is sort of one aspect of translation. So they do not only offer adaptation services, but also
translation. Yes.
Well, proper translation and rather adaptation. So often
it would be interesting for us is to know when this occurs. I mean, one hint was when you have traditional any kind of traditions that may be difficult to transfer one nation. Others are probably policies, I imagine, social policies.
Maybe we can meet while I'm here and then elaborate a little bit this to see how this can be developed. Yes, sure.
Malta from Shares asking, now we have to leave, but I ask it anyway. If it would be better to verify an English source or to verify the translation that then may have an effect on the English source.
Sorry, can you?
If you have the question, as I understand this question, if you have the English source, do you verify the source or do you verify the translation that then has an effect on the English source?
Well, verifying the source is translatability assessment. So we analyze the source to spot potential problems in multilingual projects, translations in many languages. While verification is verification on the target compared to the source. So the verifier reads the translation, reads the source, sentence by sentence, not word by word, and compare it, and they see if all the information that is in the source is in the target, that it is fluent, that it is understandable, that there are no connotations, and so on and so on. So this is, and looking for equivalence. This is the verification. The verifier looks at both and judges on the equivalence of the target compared to the source.
I think also it depends a bit on the project. There are some projects where the source text is not yet really finalized when the translations start. And in some other projects, the source text is then really fixed and cannot be touched upon anymore. Perhaps this is also something the question refers on. Sometimes a sort of verification by translation takes place and then the source is still modified. And in other projects,
yes, thank you, yeah.
The source should not be touched anymore.
Yes.
Only be discovered really
Thank you. I didn't grasp that idea. Thank you. Yeah. Then, well, there are two ways, as you say, when this update management, the errata that come. They may be spotted by the verifiers. For example, in the PISA field test verification, the verifiers spot all kinds of typos, and the source was checked and checked and checked, and there are always. And so this is this errata or update management. This is where the source is verified, if you want. Yes.
What I know also in share it with
Yeah.
I have a question about how do you cope with the regional elements of translation, and you didn't speak about that in your presentation, so I would like to know, for not only translating or verifying translation to a language, but also to taking in consideration in which context the language is going to work in. I mean, or it's intended to work. I mean, you can speak about English, American, or British, but there are more complicated cases, like, for example, different regions in Spanish, or even within a country, problems of regional difference in wording and so on. So I would like to know about your approach to that.
Verifiers are expected to flag any desired adaptations that were not already implemented in the target. So when I speak about desired adaptations, first maybe I should explain about this. We have in the source these compulsory adaptations of viscid levels and so on, and then during the translation, ideally when the Christmas bread should be adapted, it is documented also that it was adapted. But sometimes it is not done. Or it is done by for the language, but not for a region, as you say. Then it is the verifier who is expected to propose this adaptation, so that the equivalence is obtained as much as possible. These also can be spotted in the upstream work and put in the translation notes, where we expect them to occur. Now, what is interesting is in some projects there are base versions. For example, the same Spanish version translation is adapted to different Spanish-speaking countries. Then countries are expected to adapt to the local, to the regional context. Now, when you speak of regional, do you think of regions within one country, or regions like countries?
Well, both. I mean, you have to take both things in consideration. Sometimes you work within a country, and then you need to think about the difference, or how a word could mean different things within a country. It depends. But I mean, I would like to know about, for example, like if you get a translation, we want this item in Russian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you also take in consideration that well, it may be applied in some countries, some East European countries where Russian is also speaking, and if that has to be taken in consideration?
Yes, we do. We first ask for which country is it intended.
And how do you, the linguists are being chosen for that task then?
Well, we have Russian linguists from Estonia, we have Russian from Lithuania, from Israel, Ukrainian from Israel, because it's different Russian in Israel, and yes, we do. We do. Yes?
I would be interested in the future or the future of cApStAn. You said you want to be more involved into public opinion polls. So what are your plans on that? One of the last slides.
Playground.
Playground.
This one?
No.
Ah, yes. Well, in the TRAPS model, translation, double translation, the linguistic, the linguistic steps services in multilingual services from the very beginning, even item writing, workshops on item writing until the last stage. So anything that is the linguistic issues and control in public opinion polls. In the same way as in the others, but
Okay, there are no cross-national comparable issues you want to touch with the public opinion polls in the future? That's okay. I was just wondering if you had any special idea for public opinion polls, or was it just a general playground?
no, it is in our domain.
Okay.
It is in our domain of linguistic services. Yes, thank you.
Other questions, comments? I would also have a question. Do you have any projects where verifiers check their work each other? So, if, for instance, one French verifier checks the other French verifier's work?
Thank you. Yes, we do.
So
Yes.
like a four-eye principle in the verifying work?
Yes, we do. Thank you. And especially in projects where we have shared language versions and or in projects where we provide the adjudication, for example, or the translation, one or two, and the other one. We have situations, and we prepare this base version. We have situation afterwards where either the national, the local agency or the national expert, the domain expert says, in Switzerland, this would not work the way it is said in French, in this base version. So we put together then the verifiers, if it is a verification, or we put together the linguists who worked on producing the translation for old versions, and they have discussion between them if a more neutral wording could be found that would work in older versions, or there must be a distinction due to the regional differences, because these regional differences are not always, they do not always come to January being a summer month in the southern hemisphere. Sometimes it is the way the syntax of the language or the wording of the language, the same French language spoken in Belgium or in France or in Switzerland. So they do cooperate. They do cooperate, and also in GESIS, in ESS we had such an issue.
Yeah. In the context of the shared language.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have one language in different countries. Yeah. But otherwise, for only one country, this doesn't really happen. Like you have one verifier verifying for France and another one checking this verifier's work. This is not a model you are using.
No, but we...
Not in the context of shared languages, but within the same country.
or when we have several national versions within the same country, and at review we spot some differences, and we do not know if they can be aligned or not. If it is linguistic, then we work together in a team with all the players to see if a solution can be found.
Okay, any more questions or comments? So, Elica will be here this week and next week, so if you would like to discuss something in more detail or have any more queries, I'm sure Elica will be.
Here is my email address. Just don't hesitate to write to me or to Danuta. She has welcomed me so warmly, and Britta too, and also Michal.
And you will be sitting in the
I am in the library, or just drop down. Just drop in. Just drop in the library, and I'm there.
Yeah. Okay. So many thanks.
Thank you for your interest and for your time. Thank you, Dorothee, for following from far away.